That sounds like the perfect storm for someone like myself that is listening to someone like you talk about these supply and demand fundamentals. I have more exposure to silver than gold for, the reasons that people like yourself has illustrated. So are you looking at gold, the real first moving of silver being more from the precious metals bull market perspective, and gold going up and the money printing, but then once the price gets up and then that starts moving it, then you run into more of this position on maybe the back end of the rally later, where there's effects that you see more buying from these types of companies and people that might be more afraid of the shortage, that comes, you think, maybe as a later stage, that could be some extra nitro in the chamber?
Well, as you know, I think you've studied based on my knowledge of what you've done, because I've watched a lot of your stuff. I think we're on the same page that silver is kind of gold on steroids. It's hard for silver to go up if gold isn't.
Yeah.
If gold is going down, it's unlikely silver would go up, because gold is kind of the granddaddy of all commodities. So it is the ultimate currency. You should have gold in your portfolio for sure at all times, regardless if it's a bull market or bear market. You should always have an allocation of gold in your portfolio. Silver tends to be a bit more speculative, a bit more volatile, but you can catch silver on a bull market, a gold bull market, and you could see silver outperform gold at 300 to 500%, and that's the kind of environment I think we're going to be seeing. Go back to I'll use 2016 as an example, because that was a pretty dramatic year where we started January 2016 at 1350 silver, and by July we had $21 silver. It went up $7, so silver went up 50%, and gold went up from, I think, about 1050 to 1400, so it went up about 35% approximately. So there's your difference, right? So three to one change. First Majestic shares went from, I think, in the $4 range to $20 over that period of time. It went up 7 times during that time. And so you get the miners. You don't only get silver ramping quicker than gold, but you get the miners ramping quicker than the metal. So it can be pretty exciting environment if you can.
Absolutely. So speaking of volatility in the silver market, let me ask you, and something that I've always been curious more outside of just your views on gold and silver and such. So you've been in a really volatile business that you've seen times where I would imagine your cost of the sale of the good is in a really poor position compared to how much it's costing you to produce it. And there's a lot of ups and downs in it. It's kind of a stomach wrenching business, but you've become one of the most successful companies, and you yourself has become one of the most notable figures in the mining space. But you've really been able to grow in such an industry that probably eats a lot of people and CEOs alive. Could you tell me a little bit about, as a someone that's in their 20s, I'm always want to learn from very successful people who've accomplished a lot, and I'm genuinely curious, like, what are the things you've really learned about life and yourself and about business, navigating such a turbulent industry and succeeding at it too?
One of these days I have to write a book, I think, but you're ahead of me on that. But the mining sector is extremely cyclical, and it's a very much a boom and bust type industry, whereby the banks convince executive teams to buy out of the money assets or high cost assets because we have good price, and using high metal price. If you use $25 silver and $2,000 gold, it makes a lot of mines look pretty good. So some executive teams, they get caught into that, kind of FOMO, they buy high, and they start building these mines or developing these mines or doing what they're doing, exploring, and then all of a sudden the market changes on them, and then the metals drop, and then that asset becomes uneconomic, and then you have to write it down, and often the asset never gets developed, and sometimes it's 20 or 30 years into the future that asset actually shows up on someone else's books, where they might start the whole process all over again. And because the planet itself, we know where the mineralized ore bodies are for the most part. So, but we also know that a lot of them are very low grade and will need much higher metal price to be ever economic acquisitions. From a cost perspective, I love buying assets when no one wants them. I love buying assets when they're out of favor for some reason. Where I could bring our talent, our money, and turn an asset around that otherwise is not being looked at in a favorable way. And that's how I built First Majestic. We've made, over the last 18 years, I'd have to go back and count exactly, but at least 10 acquisitions over that period of time. And we've developed, one of the best portfolios in the silver space that exists today. And but at the same time, I never got caught into buying, at the peaks of markets. I've always been extremely patient and identified assets I've liked. But if it takes me, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and in the last case, the last mine we just bought back in 2018, we started making our first attempt in 2006 to buy that mine, and we didn't get it in our portfolio until 12 years later. So you have to be patient. As a major shareholder of First Majestic, I'm very much aligned with our shareholders, and every move that we make, I think about how is this going to impact our shareholders? How is it going to impact the share price? Because that's what I care about ultimately, is making a profit and making successful operations that can stay around during these cyclical periods. So you look at an asset that's got decent grade, low capex, that can survive in a low metal price environment. That's what you need to have in your portfolio. You can't have all these high cost assets in your portfolio that need high prices constantly, because as I said earlier, that this environment is very cyclical.
So a lot of times, and I know you see it probably, the truth is most people are not successful at their life. They say 9 out of 10 people die with less than $10,000 and virtually no financial assets. 76% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And you probably see it a lot in people you talk to, and especially looking at the younger generation. It's like, something's volatile, and then we just can't handle the stress or the turbulence of it, so we give up, or we say, oh, it's not meant to be, it's getting too hard. What are some of the tools, you talked about patience, what are some of the tools or personality traits that really developed in you to make you a successful leader with First Majestic and your core team? What are some of those things that have allowed you guys to succeed? You said patience and long-term vision and keeping low cost. What are some other type of interpersonality traits that's made you successful? Because I'm really fascinated in, there's a lot of, you said all the, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, we just broke up a little bit there. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I just was saying that, I think it goes back to, my character. I'm very stubborn, and I'm very convicted. Throughout my life, when I've listened to other people's opinions on certain things, on ideas that I've had, they've generally been wrong, and I've generally been right. So I, and that's kind of created this kind of tenacity, this kind of stubbornness in me, where, putting together, my first company, First Quantum Minerals, African-based copper company. I remember, the street, when I was trying to raise money, saying, "Oh, that asset's too small. You're never going to do anything with it. It's what are you doing? Like, you're wasting time, and go drill a hole in the ground." And I said, "No, we have a plan. We have a vision, And some people bought into it, other people didn't. And now, that company is one of the largest copper companies in the world. And in 2002, when I put together First Majestic Silver, I did much the same thing. I went and looked for assets that I had a particular view on the metal. I had a particular view on where we're going to go. I predicted $50 silver. Silver was $55 at the time, and no one believed it. And so I put together an asset base over from 2003, 4 to 2006, 2007, and I had no competition. It was actually pretty crazy. I was able to raise not necessary capital because I had some reputation, and so I had some financial backers, and we basically I just arrived in Mexico, put together the team, and started buying assets, and everyone thought I was absolutely crazy. But 5, 6 years later, then everyone starts copying me, and it's pretty funny. So today we have a very successful silver mining company, and I still have a view. I still believe today that silver is going to go to triple digits, and I get laughed at all the time, but I'm not going to get knocked off my game just because some people think I'm talking my own book. I actually believe, for real fundamental reasons, if we're going to go green and we're going to do everything we need to do as a human race to evolve this species to where we want to go, we need a lot more silver and copper as well. But obviously I run a silver company, so I'm going to keep pushing as hard as I can, growing this business, stay very much focused on silver, and one of these days I will be vindicated when I see triple digits.
So
Silver. So stubbornness will knock you off your game.